started with a voice. A grainy, almost ghost-like voice drifting through an empty classroom. Not from the hallway, not from the stairwell, but from above. From a high shelf. From a camera. And that's when everything changed. I was just trying to get through the final hours of a journey I'd worked hard to complete. Cosmetology school. A partnership with my high school, designed for teens like me, 16 to 20. All of us trying to earn our hours, chasing that license, dreaming of a career in beauty. At this point, I was almost done. So close to the finish line, I could feel it. My curriculum was complete. I wasn't allowed to do color anymore. No more mannequins, no more tools. Just time to burn. Sitting, studying, waiting. You needed 1,500 hours to graduate, and I was simply waiting for the clock to tick down. So I found solace in the quietest place in the building. Upstairs, an empty second classroom, part cafeteria, mostly forgotten by the rest of the school. A safe little corner where I could pop in earbuds, watch hair tutorials, and try to stay sane. Most days, I was the only one there. And honestly, I liked it that way. The first years were noisy, always talking, always moving. This space gave me a kind of peace that felt earned. But peace, it turns out, is fragile. That day, I was sitting there, phone in hand, half watching, half dreaming, when I heard it. A woman's voice, grainy, metallic, disembodied. At first, I thought I imagined it. A glitch? A ghost? Then I looked up, and there it was. A Ring camera, mounted high on the shelf, watching the entire room. I froze. That voice? It belonged to the school's owner, an older woman, wealthy, elegant, and currently halfway across the world on a cruise. Yet somehow, watching me. I couldn't make out what she was saying. The audio was warped by distance, maybe lagged by the time zones, but I could hear enough to know. She saw me, and that realization hit me like a wave because I didn't know that camera was there. Because I didn't know how long she'd been watching me. Because being alone in that room had always felt like my one safe space. And now, it didn't. My stomach twisted. My pulse raced. I felt exposed, violated. I wasn't doing anything wrong. Just sitting, just existing. But now, I felt seen in the worst way. And so, I did what anyone might do in that moment. I picked up my purse. I quietly walked away. I found a spot in the building where the camera couldn't reach me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't dramatic. I just wanted a little privacy, a little control over my own body and space. I didn't feel safe under that unblinking electronic gaze. But the story doesn't end there. Later that day, one of the assistant instructors approached me. She had a message, not in her words, but relayed. The owner had noticed I moved out of view. She was displeased. I was being scolded for leaving the camera's line of sight. Let me say that again. I was being scolded for choosing not to be watched. That's when something inside me cracked. This wasn't about breaking rules. This wasn't about defiance. This was about dignity, about consent, about how much of yourself you're expected to surrender in spaces that say they're safe. I hadn't signed a waiver saying I could be surveilled. No warning was posted. No camera was disclosed. And yet somehow, my discomfort wasn't the problem. My reaction was, she said something else too, through the instructor. A comment, casual, offhand, chilling. It's time to wake up, she'd said, referencing, apparently, an accidental nap I'd taken earlier that day. So now I knew. She'd been watching for a while, watching me sleep. Let that sink in. I don't know how long she'd been tuned in. I don't know how often she checked that feed or what she hoped to find, but she saw me when I thought I was alone. She watched in silence, and when she spoke, it wasn't to ask if I was okay. It was to correct me, control me. And suddenly, everything about that school felt different. It no longer felt like a place to grow. It felt like a place to be observed. I'd spent months pouring myself into those hours, showing up, studying, doing the work, all for that final certificate, that validation that I had earned something real. But now, I felt like a subject under glass, like I had no right to exist off camera, like my body, my time, my presence, all belonged to someone else. And I started to wonder, was this normal? Was this legal? Was this how it's supposed to be? I thought about all the other students, some of them even younger than me, who had no idea they might be on camera too. I wondered how many moments had been quietly recorded. I wondered how many times silence had been mistaken for permission. Some people might say, it's just a camera. It's her building. It's her right. But is it? Is ownership a license to intrude? Is authority a justification for surveillance? At what point does supervision become something darker? I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I didn't call her out publicly or try to rally anyone behind me. I just stepped away from the lens. I claimed a sliver of privacy in a building where I was still expected to clock in and do time. But even that, it seems, was too much. So here I am, asking the question out loud, the one that's been gnawing at me ever since. Was I wrong to move? Was I wrong to protect my peace? Was I the asshole for not wanting to be watched? So, am I the asshole? And now, here's my reflection. This one hits a nerve because it's not just about cameras. It's about power, about space, about how much of ourselves we're expected to surrender just to belong. The OP didn't yell, didn't revolt, didn't trash the place or start a protest. She simply got up and moved to where she felt safe. And that's the part that's haunting, because for that small act of self-preservation, she was punished. We live in a world that's increasingly monitored. Cameras in stores, on streets, in schools, sometimes for safety, sometimes for security, but sometimes just to exert control. And when those lines blur, when someone in power decides that your presence must always be observable, it stops being about safety. It becomes a quiet kind of domination. What's worse is the emotional cost. The way OP's sense of safety, her feeling of peace in that upstairs room, was stripped away in a moment. Not with force, not with violence, but with a quiet voice from the corner of a ceiling. It's easy to say, that's just how things are. But we can do better than that. We can choose to ask questions. We can choose to set boundaries. We can choose, like OP did, to move. So now I turn this to you. Have you ever felt watched when you thought you were alone? Have you ever sacrificed your comfort just to avoid confrontation? And how do we protect ourselves, not just from surveillance, but from the slow erosion of trust? Leave your thoughts in the comments. We're listening. This was AITA Stories, and we'll see you next time.